And welcome to episode 23 of Orab Sports Complex Talk Sports to Me. I'm your host, the Sports Guru. Hope you're all having a safe and healthy quarantine during this unprecedented time in America. And thank you for all being great Americans during this COVID-19 pandemic. In last night's episode 22, we spoke with Piketon head coach and former ABA All-Star Kyle Miller about his track from small town to a professional basketball contract and what tools he used to accomplish his dream. In this episode, brought to you by Orab Sports Complex and Anchor.fm, we will continue to discuss small town sports, big city dreams, 10 ways to separate yourself in a competitive world of athletics. Tonight, in part 4 of 5, we will discuss how to overcome the obstacles that may arise being from a small town and fulfilling big dreams. Tonight, another great guest will be with us with another great story, and he will tap in just a few minutes. All syndications of this podcast are available at Anchor.fm, Spotify, Breaker Radio, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Google Podcast, as well as Apple Podcast. In the world of sports, like we discussed last night, there are many factors that contribute to success, especially the success of a young athlete. And one of those is opportunity. With that said, most opportunities come from exposure, and with exposure comes interest, and with interest hopefully comes offers. And tonight we will talk to another young man who had interest, who had opportunity, and who had offers. Oftentimes in small towns, those opportunities never come. A lot of it comes down to who you surround yourself with and their ability to help you reach your ultimate goal. It's not an issue of talent a lot of times. It's an issue of being at the right place at the right time in front of the right people. So we will talk about that. In the previous 2 episodes, I gave you 3 issues that rural athletes deal with. And I also gave you 3 disadvantages. And before we proceed, I will go over those 3 issues and 3 disadvantages. The 3 issues that a lot of local athletes go through are they are misled, misinformed, and misguided. Not in all cases, but in many. The 3 disadvantages are the level of competition, the opportunity in which I've mentioned, and lastly, small town politics. Small town politics controls a lot of stuff in small town sports, which we will dig really deep into today and tomorrow. So without further ado, I want to give you my list of the top 10 things that small town athletes need to do to maintain or reach their ultimate goal. Number 1, live outside their bubble. Number 2, develop a plan. Number 3, find their niche. Number 4, surround themselves with quality leadership. Number 5, outwork the competition. Number 6, be open-minded in your development. Number 7, find programs and AAU programs that serve your needs. We'll talk to our guest tonight about that and how that worked for him. Number 8, get started on your ACT and SAT prep early. We'll talk to our guest tonight about that as well. Number 9, get internet questionnaires filled out and build as many relationships as possible. A lot of times people don't realize relationships are one of the biggest keys, because if you don't know the right people, it doesn't give you an opportunity to be in the right places. Last episode, I gave you the story of Larry Bird. Tonight, I want to talk about a young man from Rand, Virginia, Randy Moss. Comes from a very small town. And the irony in this whole situation is him and Jason Williams, the longtime NBA point guard, come from the same high school. They're both from Rand, West Virginia. Both very good, both very skilled, and both had high expectations on the possibility of their dreams being accomplished through football and through basketball. The kicker is both were very good football players, both were very good basketball players. However, they chose different directions. Randy Moss going to football, being a Hall of Famer, and Jason Williams going to basketball, arguably, potentially, maybe a Hall of Famer for what he was able to bring to the game as known as white chocolate. Randy Moss ran outside Iran and was able to produce a life for himself and for his family. And he came from a small town, but he never gave up on his dream, and he always believed in what the process was going to be for him. Something that I think people don't pay enough attention to is the qualities that it takes to be really good at whatever it is that you're attempting to do. And those qualities take hard work, dedication, and commitment. And tonight we're going to talk to our guest about work ethic, desire, hard work, passion, the fire, and the pursuit of a dream. Because all these things were factors in his ability to be who he is and who he was. And we talked to Kyle Miller last night. We didn't expand on it as much with Bo in part 2 of the series because Bo is relatively younger and just getting started in his pro career. But we talked to Kyle last episode about his ability to transfer what he learned through sports into how he is successful as a teacher, as a coach, as a husband, and as a father. And tonight we will get more of that from our guest. So we are not going to spend a whole lot of time tonight on the extraterrestrial input. We did a lot of that through segment 1 and segment 2 and segment 3. So tonight we're going to move on and we're going to talk to our guest. Tonight, our guest is a sharpshooter, a young man who has transformed his life to father, husband, and coach, but is probably more well known in the nation for his ability to knock down the open jump shot and to make the people around him better. He is the Southern Hills League all-time leading scorer. That is until his record was broken a couple years ago by none other than his little brother. He did pass the legendary scorer Paul Cluxton to obtain that record. He scored 50 points in a single high school game. He is the Shaq all-time leader for threes in a game with 13. He is the Shaq season leader and career leader in threes. He's a 4-time All-State selection, multi-year District 14 Player of the Year, second all-time in Ohio in three-pointers made, and third for threes in a game. After transitioning from high school to college, he attended Division I Akron University. He spent 2 years there, one as a redshirt, one actively playing, and decided, and we'll get into tonight, what it was that made him leave Akron. But he went on to Valdosta State University in football country and quickly made it basketball country, winning conference championships and taking the Peebles, Ohio pride to Georgia to again amass the record books, joining the 1,000-point club, being third fastest player to score 1,000 points, third all-time for threes, second all-time in free throw percentage, and one of the only players in OHSA history to be selected All-State 4 times. Please help us welcome Adams County and Peebles, Ohio superstar and one of the top 5 players ever. And if you know anything about the Southern Hills League, you know that it is not a place that is easy to get recognition in terms of greatness. He's one of the top 5 players to ever play in the Southern Hills League, Blake Justice. Blake, welcome, buddy.
Hey, man, what's up?
Hey, it's good to have you on the show tonight.
I appreciate it.
So, tell us when you were growing up, and the interesting part about this is I got to witness the beginning of your basketball career because your mom was at Ripley coaching girls at the time that I was playing at Ripley for a year or two. And so tell us, about how your love for the game came about and how it became something that you genuinely acquired a passion and a passion for?
I think just growing up and that being what I was around so often, with my uncle having coached, both of my parents coaching, both of my parents have played. It was just something that the whole family was always, heavily involved in, and just slowly but surely, just playing outside in the yard and, shooting inside the house. I can remember at a young age, just, them announcing my name, running through the hallway of the house. And, it was always something that you always wanted to do. And then, then you set your goals and spend, the rest of your life trying to get those.
I think something that a lot of people don't do is set goals early. A lot of people wait until they're in high school or after they played a year or two in high school, and that's when they decide that they want to, chase a scoring record or get a 3-point record or get a rebounding record. Or, I've got some kids that have played a couple of years already, and now they're telling me they want 1,000 rebounds. And something that you've done from an early age is always set a goal of what it is that, I remember talking to you when you were probably not even in middle school yet, telling me that, you were going to break Paul Cluxton's scoring record, and so you did that at an early age. What was that made you want to just be more than just a player, that made you want to be great?
I think when you look back and as you're growing up, you always want to be known for something. And, at a young age, I put a lot of time into basketball and had some, early success. And, just coming from a small area, that's all you hear. We didn't have football. Basketball was a thing. And, you're obviously pretty familiar with it. When you're growing up and you hear all these names of people who was great at basketball, or, your dad was this and this, your dad and your uncle was this, and your mom was this. And, you hear that so many times over and over again that you start, you either buy in or you quit. And it's like, I'm like, man, I want to be better and be known of being better than all of these people, by far. And was lucky enough to, have the opportunity to do so.
Something that we talked about in the previous couple of episodes, and it's a question that I'll continue to ask you as well, because it's imperative to get different views from different people. But, something that was always huge to me as a player, and something that I feel like propelled me to being, whatever it was that, however good that it was, so to some people I was really good. To me, I was okay. To some people, I was probably bad. But something that I always knew for me is that in order for me to reach my peak, I was going to have to live outside my bubble. And so I want you to touch on that a little bit, just about how important it is, how important it was to you to not just be good in Peebles and to not just be good in Adams County, but to be good regionally. And as you grew older, to be good on a state level. And as you grew older, to be good on a national level. And as you grew older, to be good on a world level. Like, how important was that to you? And what age were you when you figured that part out?
I would say as you're coming up through and you might be, a little bit better than your buddies or a little bit better than the people on your team. And, I think it was probably around middle school age when, I started going to some OYB tournaments, and I was obviously blessed with parents that would take me, wherever I needed to go to experience what I wanted to do. And, you get to those tournaments, and I can remember going in there with, some guys that everybody's familiar with. It was me and Andrew Seaman and Craig Unger and Gabe Haynes from Chillicothe. And, we went to these tournaments, and we was no longer the best. It wasn't we were the best from our area, but we wasn't the best team, and we wasn't winning tournament after tournament. And it just kind of opens your eyes and lets you see, what's happening in your little community and or your city isn't what's happening, throughout the world. I mean, there's always someone that's working harder than you and striving to be better than what you're striving to be. I think it was a little bit eye-opening for me, and it kind of, let me realize, every season that people was like, I might have done this and that's great, but, Trey Burke is number 3 in the nation. What do I got to do to be ranked in the nation? What's going to separate me and get me those Division I offers at the time was the goal.
Well, something that there always was about you, and there was with your brother, and it's interesting because I saw like the changing of the guard in your family. Like I watched it with my own eyes. Like when your Uncle Brian came to Ripley to coach, he was still relatively young. He may not have been in his prime, but he wasn't far removed from it. And your dad was still really good. And your dad was at Peebles, your Uncle Brian was at Ripley. And we used to like do a lot of stuff together, like open gyms together and 3-on-3s together. You can only have two kids from the same team. So, me and one of my teammates would link up with like Yancey Gordley and one of those, Seth Robinson or, and I have a lot of really good relationships with guys from Peebles. Jamie and Jones and Lear McCoy and Michael Cheeseborough and Yancey Gordley and Seth Myers and Heath Robinson and Adam Weber, and like there's a lot of guys that are really Luke Ogden, Trey. People don't know my buddy Trey Edwards was the best basketball player around when we were kids. Like, dude was a stud, man. Like him and Nathan Kopis were on a level of their own before his accident. And like, I got a really good relationship with those guys from Peebles because your dad and your uncle were coaching us. But one of the things that was prevalent to me through those two were, if you're open, shoot it. If you can create space, create it. Like, it was never about 8 and 10 passes to get a shot. It was always about getting the best available shot. And if your man can't guard you, expose him. And so a lot of us were raised to play basketball in systems where pass and cut, pass and cut, pass and cut, pass and cut. And I think something that you were more, that you were taught from an early age was, if he can't guard you, don't let him. And you were really good about getting to your spots and running off screens. And, I think your brother was probably maybe a little bit different or better in terms of the one dribble pull up, just because that was his bread and butter. And yours was the catch and shoot and transition knockdown three. But you got open a lot. You were open a lot. And so how did you get yourself to a point to where you seemed like you were always open? Because guys struggle to do that. You seem like you did it all the time.
I think if you look at it, and the game of basketball is not always taught at a young age anymore. A lot of times it might be one-on-one, which is great, but you got to learn how to read your man, and I think understand how to come off screens. And the best way to do that is you mentioned, is 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 in a half-court setting. And just, anybody can get open in transition if their man's slacking. It's if my guy's, stuck to my hip, how do I get the separation before the ball gets to me? And be able to get my shot off before he has a chance to even contest it. Some of those guys that you mentioned, and obviously my dad and uncle, from the time that I was in middle school, maybe even earlier, we were playing 3-on-3, and it wasn't, you know how competitive those guys are. It wasn't we're going to let Blake shoot. It was, if Blake hits a couple, then I'm going to switch and guard him, and he's not going to get open anymore, type of thing. So, I think from a very young age, myself and both, benefited from that and just being taught the game of basketball, and then, taking that niche and putting it at the next level, and, ultimately, continue to climb with that and got better and better.
I think, in high school, especially your junior year, I was coaching at Ripley, and there were a lot of really good players in the league. There was there were you in the league, and there was, Ripley was loaded, and I thought Andy Countryman was always underrated a little bit. I thought he was a really good guard. The kid from North Adams,
Drew Dolly.
Drew, but I'm talking about
Drew,
Craig Unger, the kid that was like a machine. Like the only person in the league prior to, I think the last time that somebody put up numbers like Craig Unger did his senior year, and you were putting up relatively numbers the same, was like Nathan Kopus back in the the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, and you guys were the league at the time was loaded, and I thought that there were some teams that were as good as Peebles, but I thought that you were always the X factor in terms of being able to get over the hump. And what I mean when I say that is we come to your place senior year, junior year, they called a really bad call on Brian Applegate. You hit three free throws at the end of the game with 1 second on the clock. We had a 2-point lead. You beat us by 1. Senior year, we come to your place and we're playing for a league title. That game is for the league championship, the overall league championship. And I told DeMarco, I said, if you score 30 tonight, we will win. But you have to score 30. You got to match Blake. Like, Jaron and Rave are going to do what they're going to do, but you have to match Blake. And I think he had 34. And I think you might have had 44. And so you exceeded his level. You know what I'm saying? And like you leveled up. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of good players can't do. And I think that's the thing that makes them only good and not great is their inability to level up, because DeMarco took a step up that night. He leveled up, but then you leveled up another step. And so, for me, I always wondered, it's not about it. It's at that point, it's not a skill thing, because if he can score 34, it's not a skill thing. If you can score 34 points in a high school basketball game or a college basketball game, I don't care who you're playing against. You still got to put the ball in the bucket. So you can go, but you were able to go a step further. What is the mindset of that guy that is able to go a step further, that's able to take the next step?
It's really hard to put an exact word or definition for it. I think it's something that you're not necessarily born with, as some people would say. I think it's something that you embrace, and it's embracing the challenge every single day of your life, not just embracing that one challenge, I think it was how I was raised. I think, I was raised that there are no excuses. There's no, you don't get an excuse for why you played bad. You played bad because you played bad. You can't say, well, the official was doing this, or, he was holding me like this. There is no excuses. It's you go out there and you're either going to be the best player in the gym or you're not. And, I think that was something that was kind of installed. And, your confidence grows as you get older and older. But, for me, I think obviously going into that night, we knew what it was for. And we knew that we were going to get their best shot just like they were going to get ours. And I think it's something that's just installed in you from a pride standpoint to, just a drive. And it's not something that hits you that night in warm-ups. It's something that from the time I was in, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, all those championship games or regular season games meant as much to me to win as that senior night game, against Ripley. So I think it's something that it's just that inner drive, man, that you got to find a way to get to that next level and, or at least give yourself a chance to have that success.
You've always worked adamantly on your body and your game and your personal skills and your ability to be really good. But something that I think a lot of people don't understand is, or a lot of people don't know about you, is you would never take the credit for it, but like the guys around you, like I thought Tyler Arnold was a much better player because of being able to run with you. I thought Andy Countryman. Hello? We lost him, guys. So as I was saying, I think that Blake as a high school player, and I'll go on until he calls me back. Blake as a high school player was able to make the guys around him a lot better. And even though he took his shots, he still made the guys around him a lot better. And so some of the guys, and when he gets back with us, we'll talk about some of those guys, but some of the guys that he played with, Andy Countryman and Jake Daniels and Tyler Arnold, and there were several guys that he played with that were really good players, but their level of play was elevated by playing with someone who forced them to be better. And if you don't know like the story of this group of guys, you won't really understand because um they were good for a long time, but it was a cluster of guys. So, he was a 4-year starter. So he started from freshman to senior year. And so when you're a 4-year starter, you play with every class that's there. You play with the class that's there when you get there, and the two classes that are ahead of you, and then your class. And so,
can you hear me all right, Jason?
yeah, I can hear you now. So I'm talking about your ability to make Jake and Andy and Tyler and some of the guys that you played with better. Even though you were the leading shot taker and even though you were a shot maker, you still made those guys better and really good at what they did, what their roles were. And it was good enough for like Andy Countryman to go have a great, great, great college career. It was enough for Jake Daniels to be able to go to college and have a really respectable career. So, as a leader, how do you get the most out of your teammates?
I think the first thing is you got to do it with your own effort first. You got to lead by example. You can't be the guy that's complaining or, telling someone else they need to get in the weight room if you're not in the weight room. If you're not the hardest worker, then it's hard to convince someone else that it's worth working for. And then from a standpoint of getting along and playing for each other and building that chemistry, I mean, you build that relationship on the court, but you build it just as much off the court. I mean, obviously, that Andy was, me and him were side by side all the time. By the time we was 2-3 years old, and so I mean, he was working out in the driveway with me, and then it became a thing where, at one point Evan Me was at the house, 4 days a week working out, and then Jake Daniels was at the house, 4 days a week working out, and if guys aren't coming to the house and getting extra work in, then we were going to the weight room. I think it's about opening up and inviting everybody else in, but then also once they're there, letting them know, like, look, man, we're going to get better. And, this is what we're capable of doing. And I think, it comes down to they got to want to do it and they got to buy in. But, obviously, if you do it and you lead by example, then a lot of guys want to be a part of it.
I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and he asked me not to say, not to bring his name up here. He's a real humble guy. And I said, how did you lead those teams to being so successful? And he said, his answer to me was not being afraid to humbly share my greatness. And what you have a lot of times are guys who are really good, but they're afraid to share how they got good because they don't want the people around them to be good. They don't want someone. I played with a guy like that in high school. I played with a guy who would call me and say, let's go to the gym and get some work. When this is when I was younger. He was a year ahead of me in school. But he would call me and say, let's get some work. And we would go to the gym, and he would hustle me into, he would get 500 shots and I would get 250 shots. But I rebounded 500 shots. He only rebounded 250. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
he was able to get me in the gym to get extra work, but he was also able to, somehow con me into, and my whole thought process at the time was I just want our team to be good. So I'll do whatever it takes for our team to be good. But I probably could have, he wasn't sharing, he wasn't humbly sharing his greatness. He was a really good player, really, really good player. And we had other teammates, Eric Fulton and Zach Carrington. We had other teammates who saw what the deal was, but so they didn't buy into that buffoonery. Like they were like, well, I'm not participating in that. And our team was good, and we could have been really good, but I think we were held back some by his. And this kid was a great player, but I think we were held back by him not being willing to humbly share his greatness, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, absolutely.
How were you able to compartmentalize? And the next couple questions I asked Bo and I've asked Kyle, and I'm going to ask you because I like to get different angles for my listener. But how were you able to compartmentalize the difference between your dreams and reality, being from Peebles, Ohio? Because your dream was what you saw on TV, but the reality was probably not that, and you probably knew that. So how were you able to compartmentalize the two?
I think you have to be humble enough to understand where you come from, but you also have to understand that there's probably no dream that's too big, and but you don't go from a sixth grader in Peebles Elementary School to the starting two guard on the Miami Heat. It doesn't happen that way. There's stepping stones, and there's things that you got to do, and there's goals that you got to set. And my first goal ever, was obviously when I get to the high school level, I want to win a state championship. That was the first one. That's all you could think about. That's all you hear growing up. From a personal standpoint, my goal going into high school was kind of like, look, I want to be 1,000-point scorer. I want to do that. And then once I realized, like, oh, I might do that quicker than I expected. What's the next one? Oh, I want to be the all-time leading scorer. I want to be remembered beyond high school. And then, it might be, okay, I want to be a Division I player. Then I want to be a professional basketball player. And you slowly build up your goals. You can't go from 0 to 100, without hitting all the stops in between. I think that's probably the easiest way to put it, is that you got to set your goals that are reachable. And then once you reach them, you got to, continue to increase that and drive yourself to keep building.
This is going to be a really tough question, but it's something that I ran into as entering high school, and it's something that a lot of high school kids enter. And if they don't have the people at home, like your guidance was from basketball minds,
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you enter high school with your goals and attack those goals and make a play to obtain and achieve those goals unselfishly, and make the people around you feel like that it's not all about you? Like how does that part work?
I think for me it was, obviously you got to be humble, man. If you're cocky and if you're arrogant, then no one wants you to succeed. And when you have nobody in your corner, it's a lot harder to succeed. But I think your everyday effort and grind, when you're at home by yourself, or when you're in the gym, you're putting up the extra shots, or you're in the weight room, or whatever it is that you're doing to get yourself in shape, those are all things that you're doing for yourself. That's where you can be as selfish as you want. When it's just you and you're by yourself in the gym, or you're outside at your house, or you're running that mile, like you can be as selfish as you want to. But when you're in practice every single day, and you're, when the ball gets tipped and you're in front of everybody and you're out there with your teammates, it's not about you anymore. It's whatever it takes to win the game. Without team success, you don't have individual success. I mean, you don't have, rarely do you have guys that advance to the next level that don't win. You don't average 25 on a bad team, and next thing you know, you're getting offers from good schools. You're getting offers from bad schools if you're getting offers at all. And so, I mean, I think it's about going out there and being unselfish and trying to win the game. And if that means that you got to score 20, then that night you might have to score 20. But all your individual efforts, all that selfishness of you working on your own is where that's led you to that moment. And your coaches put you in that moment because you've earned it. I mean, I guess that's the best way for me to.
I mean, that's a great answer. That's a really, really, really good answer, because something that your brother said was, his goal coming into high school was to break your scoring record. Like, that's what his goal was. He wanted to do that. And he said that coming in as a freshman, things just didn't quite work out from an offensive standpoint the way that he wanted to. The way, there was some jealousy and there was just a couple of issues and obstacles that he had to overcome. So he figured it out. And this is where a lot of players don't have the mindset or the sense ability to figure it out. He's like, I have to make these people know that, like, I'm not out here for me. I'm a blue collar guy. So I only averaged 10 points a game, but I dove in the stands after every loose ball. And I dove on the floor after every loose ball. And I boxed my man out every single time. And I'd set a screen that would break somebody's back for my teammates so they could score anytime I got a chance. And so those types of things were the type of things that people noticed, to where once I did start chasing my goals, they knew I was willing to leave it out there on the floor for Peebles, for our team. And so I thought that was a great answer, on his part, in terms of, because both of you had different paths to how you scored 2,000 plus points. You come in as a freshman and average 25. He comes in as a freshman and averages 10,
Right.
So those are some of the differences. One of the questions that I asked your brother and I asked Kyle yesterday, growing up, what was your measuring stick? How did you gauge your progression? Like, how did you know that you were at, above, or below the players at your age level that were in Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati?
I mean, I think it's easier now with social media and everything out there. It's a lot easier to do. I mean, for me, it was, you got to compare yourself to everybody you're around first. And my thing was, I was always around older kids. I was always involved with older kids. I had older cousins. I was around my dad and my uncle, who were, as you mentioned, like, they weren't far off from their prime. So I mean, there was always something to chase for me. And then once I got to the point that I felt like, I was where I needed to be in my areas, you start comparing yourself to everybody else. And like I said, now it's a lot easier to see what everybody else is doing. For my sister to look out there and say, okay, well, this girl's got 10 offers and this is what she's doing, that's accessible. Back then it wasn't. So for me, it was going to the AAU tournaments and seeing who's on the all-tournament team. Okay, I'm on the all-tournament team with this kid and this kid and this kid, and then you look them up and you figure out, he's going high major, and then that's when you start comparing yourself to other people, I think.
What was the message that you received from your parents and your inner circle during your development? Like, what are the things that they were telling you? Like, because a lot of kids are going through a developmental phase right now where they don't have positive reinforcement. They've got adults around them that are self-invested. They're invested for their purpose. And so what were some of the things that they told you, like, during the process?
I mean, at a young age, it was the rule for my dad, and I'm sure my mom swayed in on it, was he wasn't going to put me on a basketball team and coach it, at the third grade level unless I worked hard enough to prove to him that I was willing to be the best player on that team. And I think that's slowly carried that work ethic and kind of that mental mindset that, and obviously the higher up you go, the less likely it is that you walk in the gym and you're the best player, but you better be in the top, and you better be willing that if you leave the gym that day and you don't feel like you're the top, then what are you going to do to chase that? And I think, for them, it's the discipline level at a young age that they always remained willing to do whatever it took. I mean, if I could count how many times they were willing to go out there and rebound. I mean, a lot of parents and a lot of people don't do that for their kids anymore. You know, they come home from work and they don't feel like spending 2 hours in the garage or in the driveway rebounding for somebody or going to the gym. And I think they showed me how much effort they were willing to put into me, that on the flip side, you didn't want to let them down. If they're willing to go and do all that for me, and, as a coach here, there was days that I'm spending an hour after practice with Bo because he won't leave the gym. And shoot, now it's even more relevant to me how much effort they put into it, because it ain't fun to rebound for 45 minutes.
Because you did it for your brother at V State, yeah.
Yeah, and once if you're a parent, you want your kid to go 100, go all in and give everything and be the best. You got to be willing to be your best to help them get there. And I think it's too easy for parents nowadays to say, well, I'll just hire somebody to do it, or and they're not willing to take them to the workouts or whatever it may be. I mean, you got to be willing to sacrifice for your kids in order for them to understand what sacrifice really is.
I agree wholeheartedly. Few more questions, and then I got some favors to ask of you. The one thing I want to talk about right now is how you transitioned from high school to Akron, and then I want you to just talk to some people about, because one thing that Kyle said yesterday is it's only failure if you give up, and there's a lot of people who leave these small towns like where we're from, and they go to D1 institutions and they're asked to, do things that they don't feel like that they probably need to do. You were asked to redshirt at Akron and you did, and then you came back and you were there that first year and you contributed and played a little bit, but it just wasn't what you wanted. And you were humble through the process, and you didn't give up and you didn't give in. You found another way. And so talk to us about that transition from high school to college and that process at Akron and how it amassed you to be, to understand that you needed to move on for what was best for your career.
I think for anybody as a freshman, it's not necessarily a small town for sure. But at any level or wherever you're coming from, when you go to that next level, it's going to be an adjustment. You're going to have an adjustment period, and you got to either be willing to flip the switch and get better and do what you need to do or not. And, I had a really, at the Division I, they bring you in the summertime. It's usually not August. So I had a pretty good summer that first summer, and then, got hurt right there right before the stretch. That led to other guys. They brought in 2 transfers, a kid from Xavier and a kid from UMBC, and they were juniors. They were older kids that had already transferred in, sat out a year, had been there, and that it put me behind them. I was hurt for a long period of time in the preseason, and it put me in a situation that, these guys are 21 years old. I'm 18 years old. Do I want to compete with them for minutes every day? And, we sat down as coaching staff and we talked about it. And the best thing for me at that time, coming back from the injury, was to redshirt and have 4 years to play. And, that it's not easy. It's not easy to go from being, one of the top scorers in Ohio and having all these records. The next thing you know, basketball is taken away from you for a year, as far as the rewarding side of it. And, that's what happened. And the next year I came back with a different mindset, a different motivation, and, did everything that was asked of me, and, had some very, very good moments, had some games that was, had some really good times and games, and preseason was unbelievable. At one point I was starting, and, next thing you know, the minutes was up and down, and we were really, really good. And there was a lot of behind the scene things that was going on at Akron that a lot of people don't know about. Whether a lot of trouble things were going on, and just wasn't a good situation for me. And, the staff they handled it the right way, and we met, and it basically, they wanted me to come back, and, just at that point, it wasn't what I wanted anymore. My goals had changed, and I decided to transfer. And again, now I'm basically 2 years without the basketball that I was used to, and you just got to find a new life and a new reason to play. And mine was, to become the best player I could be, and in some ways show the people that wrote me off that it wasn't what they thought it was, and that I could be a professional basketball player. And ultimately, whenever you sign that first contract, it's the rewarding feeling that you did what you set out to do.
Yeah. I know that, it was a pretty smooth transition for you, just based on the fact that, you went to Valdosta State and you were able to play immediately. And you were able to not just play, but contribute and make a difference and be what you were able to. One thing I talk to people about a lot, and I talk to kids about a lot, is being able to express yourself on the court. Now, you need to do it within the confinements of the team, but if you're an athlete and you can't express yourself, that's the worst feeling in the world. If you can't play your game and be who you want to be. And we talked about some things earlier that were some things that you said, that hard work is what allows you to have those opportunities. And those opportunities were allotted to you because you never gave in on the hard work portion. I'm going to give you 5 words and a phrase, and I want you to tell me what these words mean to you. Okay, so just give me a statement of what these words mean to you. It's 5 words and a phrase. Work ethic.
Gotta be the best.
Desire.
You gotta love it.
Hard work.
If you ain't outworking everybody else, then you're not putting yourself in a chance to succeed.
Passion.
Again, I think it goes back to just your heart's got to be in it.
And 2 things that you and your brother both done, you just went about it differently. Your Uncle Brian and your dad went about it differently. And I was talking to Bo, we were laughing because, he's more like your Uncle Brian and your mom, and you're more like your dad in terms of how you go about your business. You know what I mean? You're not the rah-rah type of person. Your dad wasn't the rah-rah type of person, but your Uncle Brian, and your mom, they'll jump right off in you right now. And Bo's the exact same way, And so this is the next word that I'm going to ask you. Fire. What does that word mean to you? Because you're great because you have it, but what does that word mean to you?
I think there's so many different ways you can look at it, but you gotta have the fire in you, but you gotta be willing to fuel that fire, and that's just that's basically all of what you said beforehand combined into one that makes that fire.
Okay, and last but not least, this is a phrase that we often hear. We often, and this is something that's important to me, and I talk to people and talk to kids all about it all the time. Everyone has a dream, right? Everyone has a dream. They have what it is. They want to be a pro, or they want to be on Broadway, or they want to be an artist, or they want to be an architect. Everybody wants to be a pro. Pro meaning at the top of your game and getting paid to do so. But everyone talks about the dream, but no one talks about the pursuit of the dream. So I want you to just fill me in Blake Justice eyes on the pursuit of the dream, what it takes.
I don't think there's necessarily an age that you have to start. Obviously every aspect of life requires something different. If sports is your thing, then you got to start with an ultimate goal where you want to be, but you got to set that first standard of what's it going to take to get there, and be able to map out steps in your mind of I got to get to this point by this point, or I'm not putting myself in position to get to my goal. And You got to be realistic about it, and you got to be, willing to sacrifice and put in all the time and effort. Excuses just cannot be a part of it. It's too easy to just blame my mom wouldn't take me to practice this day, or, I'm not in shape because I didn't have a in-home gym, or I didn't have access to the gym. There's so many ways that you can get yourself better. You can't have excuses, and you got to set those goals, reach those goals, and be humble about it. If you're not humble, then you're going to settle. And if you settle, then it's over with. You might as well cross off the top dream. You got to continue to climb and have that drive.
Man, it was great getting to talk to you. I wish we could have sat down and talked face to face. It's always a good time. When I called you and asked you to be on the show, we had a whole conversation within itself that day for an hour. So, anytime we get together, we always saw you at the state tournament a couple years ago, and we got to sit down and rap. And you guys are like family to me. Your uncle and your dad and your mom and Brooke and JC and and Regina and all your family. My uncle has been friends with them. My Uncle Dean has been friends with them for a long time. And, a lot of people don't know the story. Ripley, my uncle coached Pee Wee at Ripley for 18 or 20 years prior to getting a high school coaching job. He was never asked to coach middle school at Ripley. He was never asked to coach high school for whatever the reason was. It doesn't matter. No hard feelings, never here, never there. But his first ever coaching job was given to him by Tim Chadwell. And if people don't know who Tim Chadwell is, Tim Chadwell was Brian Grant's high school basketball coach. And so Tim Chadwell coached Brian Grant, and he coached Jermaine Marshall, and he coached Brandon Grant, who was also just inducted in Georgetown's Hall of Fame. So Tim Chadwell coached those guys at Georgetown. Prior to coming to Georgetown, he was a Division I player at Xavier in the 70s. So at this point, Tim has played Division I. He's coached a Division I player. And then he ultimately has four kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. His 2 boys, his girls were good too, but his 2 boys end up winning a state championship together at Georgetown in 2007, the first state championship they ever won. And then Jess ended up signing at the University of Toledo. So Tim Chadwell is one of the few people that has played D1, coached D1, and birthed D1 in this area. And so
Yep.
when he was at Georgetown, he gave my uncle a chance to coach high school basketball. He coached the freshmen at Georgetown, and he coached 1 year there. And Brian was coaching at Ripley, and his first question was, why is Dean Thompson, being from Ripley, not coaching at Ripley? He brought him back. And my uncle had the opportunity to coach boys basketball at Ripley from 95 to 2000, and then take the varsity girls job from 2000 to 2005, and then come back and be an assistant from 2008 to 2011. So had it not been for Brian Justice, I don't know if my uncle would have ever had a chance to come back to Ripley. So I pay homage to your Uncle Brian for doing that for my family. And it wasn't a favor. My Uncle Dean was a good coach, but he brought him back home. And my Uncle Dean's forever indebted to him for that, and they are forever friends. And because of that, your family to our family is like family. And so it was awesome to have you on tonight. It was awesome to have your little brother on. I got to ask the question, who's the best player in the family?
I mean, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say, but I had to ask.
I mean, you can ask all you want. Until I die, I'll have to say myself. It doesn't matter how many records are broken, man.
I had to ask. Well, here's the deal. You just tell him, you pass less, you know? You pass less.
Listen, I got every excuse in the book for that one. I always tell him, look, man, I might not be able to guard you anymore, but I'm just not sure you can guard me. And until you show me you can, look, he's gonna listen to this and then ask me to go to the gym later on tonight. So.
Right. Is he down there in Georgia right now?
He just got here today. So
because when I talked to him, he was in Florida last. So something
he came up,
Something about those them European basketball players, man. CeeLo never sits still. Chris never sits still. Bo never sits still. Guys just don't sit still, man. When they're
listen, you get a taste of that American air, man. You're bouncing around. You want to see it all before you go back.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on tonight, man.
Man, I appreciate you having me.
Take care. So that was Blake Justice, former Peebles High School standout, high school All-State player, college All-American, and played professional basketball in Germany. So, it's always good to have good people from here and from locally on the show. They give the show an added touch. And that's what you guys want to hear, man. So thanks for tuning in. That was episode 23 of Talk Sports to Me Live. Small town sports, big city dreams. I'm your host, the Sports Guru. I'll be in touch. I'll tap in with you 24 hours from now. Holla at you tomorrow. Peace.